Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Pure Joy podcast. And welcome if you're listening on YouTube. And I'm really excited to have Brad Kearns on again for a second time on the show. I think you're the official second time guest. So I'm really excited to have you. And so I'll just tell you guys a little bit about Brad. He's a New York Times bestselling author, Guinness World Record-setting professional speed golfer, #1 ranked USA age 55 to 59, high jumper, and former US national champion and #3 world ranked professional triathlete. He hosts the B.rad podcast, covering healthy living, peak performance, and personal growth with his carefree style and lively sense of humor. Brad's main message is to encourage the pursuit of peak performance through life. He promotes a MOFO mission designed to optimize male hormone function in order to maintain passion and competitive intensity throughout life. His signature morning regimen is a 5-minute plunge into a chest freezer filled with 36-degree water Fahrenheit, or a wintertime plunge into Lake Tahoe to build focus, discipline, and a natural hormonal boost. I love that. I love that you actually have your cold plunging in your bio, because I don't know if you know this, I think you do, but you've actually been a big inspiration for me for the cold plunge. And I have a big horse trough outside in my backyard. And right now it's frozen over, so I got to chip through it. But tell us why you're so into cold plunging.
I want to know how you, as a female, are carrying the torch for females across the world to get into cold plunging. Because some of the research that I've dug up, especially Jack Kruse talks about this in detail. He says that females in particular benefit from being cold adapted. Especially postmenopausal females, but I find that the cold plunge enthusiast is usually a hardcore, competitive male dude that's ready to take the challenge of jumping into Lake Tahoe or coming over and checking out my chest freezer. And I only have there's like one or two females that have ever jumped in the freezer. And so I love how you're opening that up, where it's a hormonal benefit for everybody, especially females.
Oh, it definitely is. Well, I like that it creates brown fat, and that for me, like that shivering, I get energy from it. I get that euphoric feeling, especially on days where I'm like that meh feeling, and I'm like, okay, cold plunge. And I can actually stay in for 4 minutes and 44 seconds in
Nice.
winter, which it gets below freezing here.
Yeah.
But I notice, and I don't know if you've noticed this, but when it's really cold, my skin freezes so quickly that I can actually stay in longer. Like when it's
Wow.
like, I don't know if you've tested that,
I
but
don't,
it's
I'm not,
like
I'm not quite
done.
that hardcore. I think that's amazing.
It's called menopause, Brad.
Oh my goodness.
It's like I could be hot or I could cool my body down. And then and I've actually gotten another friend who's not in menopause to do it. She got her own thing and she's here in Bend because she's an athlete. And she's just like me, like anything that's hardcore, we just like. I mean, I guess that's the masculine side of us that likes hardcore things.
Yeah, and I think it's important to convey to the listeners who maybe have never tried this, or their only reference point is jumping in that freezing lake and screaming and running right out and into the warm blanket or the hot shower. And so this regimen, this therapeutic cold exposure, is not meant to be torture or to create an unhealthy sense of discomfort or suffering. And Kelly Starrett had a good quote. He was one of the early inspirations for me and giving me all the instructions. And he said, "Look, man, you got to get out before you start shivering. That's your goal. And if you stay in longer than that, you're just showing off." So I can, time myself and see that I'm progressing with my adaptation. But it's never about suffering or doing a $10 bet with your pal that you can stay in longer than a certain time and then feel miserable for hours afterwards. So it's a therapeutic dose, just like all the other things that we know in life are healthy hormetic stressors, where you get this therapeutic dose of a sprint workout or lifting weights. You're not lifting weights for 3.5 hours. You're lifting weights for 32 minutes, and then you're out of there before you break down all your muscles and exhaust yourself. Same with the sauna. More people like my sauna, Elena. I don't know why. When they come over, I got the sauna and the cold freezer, but the sauna is very popular. The chest freezer's not, but it's the same therapeutic exposure to heat, where if you went in there for 3 hours, you'd be in deep trouble. They'd take you out and over to the emergency room. So
Yeah.
with cold, what's cool about water, especially, I mean, cold air is also healthy for the human, and being out there for a hike where you get a little chilly and then you come in and warm up feels great. But with cold water, since it's 25 times more dense than air, in a few minutes you can get this awesome, amazing hormone and neurological therapy like nothing else. And for the cost of a horse trough, or if you want to go big time and get a chest freezer, you're talking about $500 or something. But in terms of value for dollar, when you're talking about a cryotherapy session that costs $47 each time you visit, or getting a sauna or joining a health club, and you can start by just taking a cold shower, so you don't even have to go to the extreme until you become more adapted.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about a few things there. One is I love your approach, and we'll talk more about this, but you have this approach which is about like not killing yourself to get results. And I really love that about you. And I kind of have learned that over the years as well. So talk to me about like timing, like, so getting out before you're shivering. So it's going to be different for everybody, right? So let's say someone's new to it. So like what, starting out for 1 minute, or just as long as they can do it without like freaking out, or
Yeah, I
what?
think the easiest starting point would be in the shower, right? So you can come into the shower, take your wonderful warm shower like you do every day, and then just make this intention at the end to crank that arm over to maximum cold and stay in there for 30 seconds. But the thing is, we have to override this reflex response where we, go into an immediate kind of shock reaction to the cold water. And so to do that, first point is you got to form this intention like, okay, I'm going to do this. I heard this on a cool podcast. I'm going to try it. I'm not going to wimp out. And so you kind of get a little bit motivated and focused that you're going to carry it out. And then secondly, I think the controlling of the breathing is really a wonderful strategy that you can learn. I mean, we talk about breathing as such a great health practice, but when it comes to pairing that with cold, that's when you can really understand and appreciate the benefits. So what I do is, as soon as I enter the cold water, first I hold my breath. So I don't want listeners to try that at home, but I go underwater until I have to catch my breath. And what that does is it takes my focus away from the cold, and I'm just so happy to get a breath. Whether it's putting my head underneath in the tub or out in Lake Tahoe, I'll just swim underwater for like 10 breaststrokes and then emerge, and I'm I'm catching my breath, and it feels great to catch my breath. I'm not worried about the cold yet. But then I commence a set of 20 deep diaphragmatic breaths, and that's how long I spend in the waters to complete my breath cycles. And so it actually becomes a meditative experience where all I'm focused on is taking those deep breaths and exhaling and going through that nice cycle like you might do in a yoga class or anywhere else. And that allows the nervous system to kind of endure what you might otherwise scream and go into immediate shock and have to get out. And I've seen people try my chest freezer, and I say, get in there and start, do some deep breaths, and they'll put one leg in and jump out and go, oh my gosh, you're crazy. So you have to kind of transcend that first shock that we're prepared for. And with the cold shower, so I would commence some deep breaths. So you're really thinking about your breathing, you're taking those nice deep breaths, and then you crank the arm over to cold, and then 30 seconds will be no problem, and you'll feel totally invigorated after you get out. And then you can work toward eventually, let's say, a 2-minute exposure to a cold shower. Unless you're in Phoenix in August, then it doesn't really count. Like, yeah, I made it, all I did was take cold all summer. Congratulations, the water's 77 coming out of the faucet. So for most of us, for a good part of the year, the shower is a good starting point.
Yeah, you actually, I used to live in Tucson and I could never get cold enough, and I would be throwing ice cubes in the bathtub. And yeah, but here, when it's winter in other places, it's a lot easier. But what I've noticed, and I don't know about you, but like I'll do the cold showers, and I like that it kind of seals my pores and I'm actually not cold when I get out. But something about, for me, that stillness in the plunge, like I'm not thrashing around, I'm not having to turn and lift my arms. Like something about me just sitting in there is very zen, and I just get super zen. I don't like my hands in, and I wear wool socks. And sometimes my elbows start to ache, so I kind of do this thing where I put them on the sides. But because I've kind of figured some things out. But I guess I haven't figured out the putting my head under yet. I'm not brave enough to do that part. So
Oh,
that'll
you'll
be an
love it.
experiment
You'll
to
love it. Yeah.
try. Okay, cool.
It immediately puts you into the right mindset that you're just focused on emerging and catching a breath. And people have died doing Wim Hof technique around water. Even a person in my where I used to live in Sacramento, for some reason he was doing the sequences near or in a hot tub, and he passed out because you can easily pass out doing these breathing exercises. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just a comfortable submersion for an appropriate amount of time, and then you emerge and you're catching your breath and you're off and running with commencing the cycles of deep breathing. And I feel like it's, I'm not a meditator. I'm not out there on the cushion. I can't bend my knees sideways because of all my years running. So I'm totally disqualified from any of that. But when I'm in that tub, I can't think about anything else, or I'll start to get a little bit of a nip, a little bit of a shiver. And it's really interesting because a few times I've tried to like listen to a podcast and put my iPhone over on the side and then do my cold plunge because I'm so busy. I want to multitask, and I last like half as long, and I just feel uncomfortable and unfocused. And so it really is a great chance to, harness the powers of the mind,
Mm.
and especially that intention where it's like, I'm going to do this. It's good for me. It's not going to be torture. It's not going to be unhealthy. It's not going to be uncomfortable. I'm going to get out before that. And you'll find like amazing ability to last much longer than, the first instinct would be when you're looking at, I go to the shores of Lake Tahoe in the winter, it's snow on the ground. The tourists are out there taking pictures and they're like, are you stripping down to your bathing suit? What is this guy going in? I can't believe it. And really almost everyone watching could do it. To save their life or whatever, but they're just not, open to the idea until you kind of, get into this, get this interest going and try it in the shower.
And I think it's the biohackers of the world and the people that are willing to look at their overall health and want to make changes. Because like, how many times have we heard people saying, "Well, I could never give that up. I could never give up sugar. I could never give up my favorite." Da, da, da. And same with cold plunging. Like they'll look at me like I'm insane. They're like, "I could never do that." I'm like, "Are you sure you could never do it?" And one thing, like for your friends who put one foot in my mind, the first step is it's like they say to put your running shoes on, and that's like the first step to actually fitness. Like that first step to me is like if I can get my foot in, I am there. Like 1, 2, go, and you just sit and it's over. Like so, it's like that mental toughness of just deciding. It's like making a decision about anything in life. Like this is more important than not doing it.
Yeah, yeah, well said. And I think that's where this wonderful carryover is. And so I'm talking about this, I'm studying it. I know there's some hormonal benefits. We have the research that you get a boost of this mood elevating hormone called norepinephrine for up to an hour after even the research from Finland that's often cited is just a 20-second immersion into 40-degree water. 20 seconds, not minutes like we're, doing because we're really loving this stuff, but 20 seconds will spike this norepinephrine by 200 to 300% above normal for up to an hour. So just a quick cold plunge, you feel fantastic. And it's better than coffee. It's better than anything. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
you can
that's there
follow it
too.
gently, and that would be 20 seconds.
Yeah. But the other part that to me is even more interesting, I think, is the psychological benefits, where I feel like this gives me more focus and resilience against all other forms of distraction and stress in daily life because I'm able to discipline my mind and body to do this regimen that I have to admit, Elaine, I don't know about you, but I still get into this internal dialogue where, oh, maybe I should sweep the kitchen floor. It looks a little dusty before I'm going in. Maybe I should do this. Oh, do you want some help chopping the vegetables up or whatever? I'm always looking for an excuse, and then I catch myself like, all right, just get it done. But there's, or I might go over to my friend's house who lives on the lake. But first, I might stop at the store because I realize there's some things on the list, and so I can't claim that I'm this automatic, completely oblivious to anything pain and suffering or the discomfort that comes when you're hanging around in the lake that's 42 degrees. So it's a constant kind of dance, and I feel like just tiptoe after years. Let's say maybe this is 3 or 4 years now. I'm just tiptoeing in the direction of being a little more badass, but I think there's a long way to go until I'm Wim Hof, where I'm welcoming the cold. or that popular documentary on Netflix, The Octopus Teacher. You may have heard of that, or listeners have maybe heard of that. But this guy goes down and dives and studies the octopus and made friends with a particular octopus. But he's in water in the Cape down at the bottom of South Africa, and the ocean water's 50 or something. And this dude's swimming in there for 20 minutes at a time. And he's just, yeah, I grew to look forward to the cold ocean. I'm like, I don't know about that, man. That's pretty badass. But, in a small way, when you become adapted to this, it really does feel good as a person that you have that, resiliency. And maybe you'll be more resilient against people calling you names or your email distracting you from your core responsibility at work or whatever example it is.
And I think you're exactly right. It's just like anything in life, like diligence or just having our routines. And yeah, it doesn't always work out, but like I look forward to it. And especially on days where I'm really hot, I'm like, yeah, let me get in there and before I go out for my day. So yeah, there's always going to be distractions, but I guess we just have to decide what's more important. Right. And let's see, tell me about, so your podcast, now you have B.rad podcast, and I know it used to be called Get Over Yourself, which I love because we do need to get over ourselves sometimes. But so what was the impetus for the change on that one?
Oh my gosh, just a whim. I mean, look at my name. If you have a double entendre with your first name, you gotta leverage it. And so yeah, I changed it to the B.rad podcast. And I like the term get over yourself because I claim that that was kind of the biggest lesson I had to learn as an athlete to unlock my potential and really succeed and adapt to both success and failure. And I think it's a great, ideal for going through life, especially when some of this stuff in the health scene, the people that are listening to this show and the things that you and I are into and study, you can have a tendency to, I think, become too driven, obsessed, focused, results oriented. Attaching your self-esteem to the outcome or how you look or things like that we warn against. And so when I was able to get over myself as an athlete, even though it was pretty serious, ESPN was there filming the race and the winner got a big, huge check. And the guy who got seventh was kind of screwed because he put out a lot of money to get to the race. And so the stakes were very high for me. It was, sort of, my life was consumed by this amazing goal of trying to compete on the pro circuit. But when I was able to, kind of stay in a uh, in a comfortable, balanced mindset where whatever happened was okay because I was relishing the opportunity to travel around the world and compete and do something that I dreamed about and just try my hardest and have the privilege of competing against the other top guys. That was when you could kind of step into this zone where you were fearless and you could just go after it and not be burdened by the ego and all these things that kind of hold us back and bring us into fear and anxiety and stress and all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I love
So, B.rad, I think I renamed it really because I'm trying to define my focus, my brand, as they say. And what I really feel like I'm about is advocating to pursue peak performance throughout life. And now that I'm 56 years old, I'm a different person than when I was in my 20s racing on the pro triathlon circuit. And I no longer am in that phase of life, which is very healthy to keep, growing and evolving and going into different phases. Then I became a parent and I had to work for a career and build other skills besides just pedaling my bike all day. But you always want to have, or I recommend, always kind of cultivating this competitive edge where you really have strong goals that mean a lot to you and you enjoy going out there and challenging yourself. And it might be competing against others and being an actual athlete or a racer, but it doesn't have to, it can mean whatever it looks like to you. You might be trying to continue to evolve your yoga practice to where, you go through the hour-long hot yoga at the highest level and you feel great at the end. And all those kind of things is what I want to, kind of promote as my main theme is just maintaining that passion for your competitive goals or your healthy living goals for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And I love what I hear you talk about too, which is like we love exercise and fitness and movement because it gives us that sense of euphoria. But then there's like a fine line between pushing it, especially as we get older. And I know like we're the same age. So like as you age, like pushing yourself so hard that now your knees don't work or you're having hip replacement or you can't even get out of bed. So like, can you tell us about the difference between the two, like running a marathon versus doing things that you love and still competing?
Oh man. Yeah, don't get me started. I mean, the marathon itself, I know it's a great source of pleasure and inspiration, and they're very, very popular. You have 60,000 people running the New York City Marathon. But I think we need to take a step back for a moment, take a deep breath, and realize that the training required to do an event that extreme is not really aligned with health. And it's actually more aligned with unhealthiness, and disease risk. And the same the stuff I did as a professional triathlete. I aged myself in that 10 years on the pro circuit, probably 15 or 20 years, because it was so grueling and I was just pushing my body and challenging my immune system, my musculoskeletal system, my hormonal system was all kind of on the red line on the edge at all times and falling off the edge many times. And so it was, a vastly too stressful lifestyle to be considered healthy, even though in many ways, we think we're healthy when we're going out and pursuing these extreme goals. But I'm here to put in a big plug for kind of this variation between stress and rest, and the idea of consistently applying too much stress to your body every single day, or slightly too much stress. That's the part that I think we need to have an awakening in the fitness scene, where people are talking about their weekly mileage or how many races they can enter in a single year, or oh boy, 2020 was terrible because we missed all the races on our schedule. Maybe you deserved an off year, and maybe 2020 could be the best year yet for all your athletic and endurance or peak performance goals, because you didn't have to go out there and travel and get geared up and jacked up and have 14 races on your resume. So yeah, there is some fallout from athletes that are now suffering the consequences of pushing it too hard, and they're in the exact same boat as rock stars, or the same hospital, sharing the hospital room with people who just burn the candle at both ends. And I think it's disguised as a healthy scene because you have the Lululemon clothes and you look good and you have a six pack and all that kind of stuff. But it can easily become unhealthy, and there's a way to do it right. So that's the good stuff that we can talk about and everybody can reflect upon. That if you want to do something fun, like climb what is it, Mount Bachelor outside of Bend?
Yep.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
if that's your summer goal, that is awesome. And on that day when you do it and you have to wake up at 3:15 and start hiking so early, and it's going to be exhausting and grueling, and you get home, that is a wonderful thing for the human to do. But if you were to do that every week for 13 weeks in a row, then you start to cross that line. Obviously, I'm making an obvious example, but I think all of us who are enthused about group exercise in the gym and CrossFit and training for these triathlons and marathons and trail ultra marathons, you got to look at that balance point much more carefully, because there's a trend toward being out of balance and overstressed.
Yeah, and I think you're so right about you use the example of the six pack abs, and like maintaining pack abs, especially like for me, like I don't want to be obsessed with fitness and that's my goal in life. Like I want to live my life and enjoy my life. And like so I love what you now the book that you guys are just coming out with, which is the what is it called? The
Two
two
meals a day.
yeah, but you guys talk in there about that balance too, about like not killing yourself for the wrong reasons. And like even with this whole keto biohacking keto movement, I feel like there's so many people that I see on YouTube or listen to that are just so go 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 go. I'm like, when does this guy have time to do anything else? And I feel like talking about the balance, which I think you and Mark are really good about talking about, versus just hitting everything so hard.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of us are familiar with the concept, but I think some things get in the way of our decision making. And one of them is this type A personality that attracts people to the sports and the activities we mentioned. So when you walk into a CrossFit box, you're not talking about a cross section of the population of Bend, Oregon, where you have 12% smoke, 39% are overweight or obese. You're talking about the cream of the crop. And so when you get into that mix, you can easily get drawn away into an overly stressful extreme approach. But certainly it's better than being one of the average, where we're talking about a lazy, overweight, unhealthy, accelerated disease risk, accelerated aging population. So we should couch everything saying, get your butt off the couch, get out there, put your body through some effort, some resistance load, some cardiovascular exercise, walk your 10,000 steps a day, all that kind of stuff. And then maybe there's some questions to ask if we're kind of noticing these symptoms of overstress. And boy, when I was an athlete, I mean, it was there constantly. I was like, the norm of my life was to be pushing myself too hard and to battling illness or injury. There's always something going on that wasn't perfect. And so I'm trying to, evolve into fitness goals today that are complementing my health almost all the time. Sometimes I still mess up and overdo it, and I'll talk about a little bit more because I think it's important. But also to promote longevity and protection from disease, because these are starting to become big concerns when you're, getting up there in the upper age groups. Now, shit's getting real, and we can look around at our high school classmates that didn't show up at the reunion because they're not alive anymore, or whatever you want to say. But yeah, so I have so much fun doing this stuff.
Yeah.
And my current obsession with sprinting and high jumping is, where I go out and do these track workouts, like I'm pretending I'm a high school varsity kid all of a sudden, and trying to get better and better at it. And sometimes they're so enjoyable that I end up overdoing it. And I realize over the next 3 or 5 days, when my calves are burning, they're so sore I can't touch them, and I'm limping around the house, or I have a decline in energy, 36 hours after this super duper workout that I did, where I have to take a nap and I feel like heck, or I'm inclined to overeat, or whatever it is that's showing up. And that part, I'm still working on that, because it is so much fun to get out there and get the blood pumping, and the music's cranking at your spinning class, or whatever your example is, where you can get drawn into overdoing it and then you learn the lesson after. So all we can do is hope to get smarter. But I think for a lot of people, just dialing everything back a couple notches can really pay off, and bring a fitness awakening, rather than this notion that sore muscles are part of the fitness journey. And that's now being rethought, and the message is aggressively being communicated by the great leaders in fitness, guys like Joel Jameson at 8weeksout.com, Dr. Craig Marker. He has a great article at strongfirst.com called Hit versus Hurt, and calling out some of the flaws in the really popular high intensity interval training protocol that we all are fond of following, and that is the centerpiece of the fitness club experience. So I think there's an awakening going on, where people are realizing that just being more active, not necessarily killing yourself at the 5:30 a.m. class, but just going out there and doing things throughout the day to break up periods of stillness, is the top priority. And then the actual workout protocol would even be less important than just being moving around more.
Yeah. And so I like that you said that it's not about like, hey, stop exercising or sitting on the couch. Of course, that's not the message. It's just like, if you are stressing yourself out too much, your adrenals are going constantly, you look like you're aging faster, your joints are hurting more, like listening to those red flags. Cause I think sometimes people don't even want to listen to that. And then I love your idea about, I heard you talking about this, about like mini workouts during the day and kind of keeping the body moving all day long versus like, okay, I did my hour and a half. Now I have the excuse that I don't have to do anything else and I can eat whatever I want because I burned all those calories and I earned my dinner. So now I can have that ice cream. And like, we get in this mindset of like that exercise is almost, I don't know if you think this, but like a form of bulimia where it's like, I have to work out super hard because I want to eat whatever I want as much as my, you know what I mean? So it's like finding the balance in all the things and not going crazy on food just because you worked out. Oh, I did an extra 5 mile run today, so I get to eat, sugar and whatever I want.
Yeah, good point. I mean, I feel like there's a revolution in the fitness scene, and there's also a strong revolution happening in the diet and nutrition scene. And this emerging research is proving this absolutely shocking insight that reducing your caloric intake and burning more calories does not contribute to fat reduction, because your body adjusts to everything. And the compensation theory, which has been around for a while now, suggests that the calories you burn during exercise are made up for with an increase in appetite, and also an increase in all forms of laziness over the remaining hours of the day. So you go to your spinning class at 6 a.m., you slam out a hard workout, and for the rest of that day, you're going to eat more and feel lazier. And it's going to be a subconscious as well as conscious. You described some conscious things like, well, now I'm going to go treat myself tonight because I did that big workout. And so what you end up with is a net zero in the category of trying to drop excess body fat. And this has been proven by large studies. One was called the Women's Nurses Health Initiative, and these women agreed for 7 years to eat a little bit less food every day and work out more. And at the end of 7 years, by the calculation, like you go on the website and you get your basic metabolic rate and how many calories this burns and that burns. So they were calculated or expected to lose 23 pounds a year. And at the end of 7 years, they had lost nothing. It was like 0.7 was the difference in weight for the entire population of 50,000 participants. And so what happened? Dr. Jason Fung does a good uh, job of citing a lot of scientific research in the obesity code. There's a new book from Dr. Herman Ponzer called Burn, where he went and studied the hunter-gatherers in Tanzania and came up with this conclusion that humans have an upper limit on daily caloric expenditure. And so even if you burn a lot of calories in the morning at your workout, you're going to slow things down. Your metabolism's going to slow and your behavior is going to slow till you hit this ceiling where it doesn't matter how much exercise you do, you're constrained by your amount of calories you can burn each day. And so the takeaway, I'm kind of talking quickly here, but the takeaway is that the association between exercise, energy expenditure, and caloric intake and weight loss is just not there. So then we have to ask, what is the secret? How do I drop this excess 5 pounds that I'm carrying, or 10 or 20? And one of them is those micro workouts that you teed me up for. And I think this is going to be a great revolution in the fitness scene where a workout doesn't have to mean this drawn out, hour long, high stress effort where you have to get in your car, drive somewhere, check in with your little tag, get a towel, go to the locker room and do this big ordeal. A workout can be a 2-minute session of standing up in your cubicle and dropping for a set of 20 deep squats and then resting for 30 seconds and doing it again. And that's tough right there. Go try it, listeners. You can pause the show if you want, but if you do these little tidbit workouts where you're doing some type of explosive effort or putting your body into some kind of resistance scene, like pulling on some cords that are hanging from your wall, or picking up a kettlebell and doing a few gentle swings, whatever it is, even if it takes 1 minute, if you put these into your lifestyle, they're going to have a phenomenal benefit in so many ways to your fitness, to your daily movement obligation, to your ability to be a fat burner as a baseline rather than a carbohydrate dependent eater. And so these little things that kind of, they don't go into your logbook as a big descriptive workout, but they can be life changing, more so than that intense devotion to being there at 6 a.m. and being in the first row of the bikes every day, thinking that that's going to lead to weight loss.
And 2020, the gift that it gave me anyway is like that I couldn't go to the gym. So I had to start figuring out more stuff at home. And I love that you're saying this because I've been doing this naturally all through 2020 and now in 2021. I'll get out, shovel snow for 30 minutes, and then I'll do some housework like vacuuming. And then, oh, I love this girl that does HIIT training without, you don't use any machinery. And it's usually 30 minutes, but sometimes I only have 15. So I'll do the other half later. And so this fits perfectly in that you just like, I've got a snippet of time. Let me do a quick cold plunge, or let me do my quick 15 minutes. I don't have to make it this big ordeal, because that's what stops people. Like, oh my God, the thought of getting out and running 5 miles and like having to drive to my spot. And that's like an hour and a half project. And I don't have that much time. And it's going to stress me out more because now I'm behind in work, or like, rushing to get to something. So this whole little mini thing is just, I love this. And it breaks that whole thing of what, like, I think women, especially, and maybe you guys as men feel this too, is this, like, we work out like fiends. We cut our calories. And like, I noticed for me being 55, that it doesn't work the same way it did in my 30s. I can't just like starve myself and work out and get the results. So this is just, to me, even though it's like what's new is old, like it's revolutionary. And I love what you're talking about in this new book, the two meals a day, because I listened to you guys talking about it. And some of just these things that you're talking about, which is like, working on like how you're eating. I'd love to get more into that, like how you're doing 2 meals a day versus eating constantly, which I know so many people that feel like that's an old, even from the 80s and 90s, like, oh no, we're great. Humans are meant to be grazers eating all day long. I'm like, are we really? And like, yeah. And as we know, being in ketosis, you're not hungry. So that doesn't even happen. But let's talk a little bit about like the food thing and how to balance all of that.
Thanks. Yeah, I think we did a good job conveying this exercise idea that you don't really want to overdo it. That can be a disaster to your health and also, compromise your fat loss goals. And then when we go on to the diet side, of course, that's where most of your results are going to come from is transforming your diet. But the way we've been going about it wrong is to try to just shave off some caloric intake every day and think that if you go to your calculator, you're going to lose 23 pounds a year, like the women in the health initiative. And what happens when you kind of cut back is your body just gets used to a new level of caloric intake and you're a little bit less energetic. You're a little bit worse at your workout performance and recovery because you're in a conservation mode that's a genetic response to reduction in calories. And so your body gets used to this new normal, if you want to call it that, and just slows everything down. And again, more research from, this is all validated by amazing science where if you start to eat more calories than you are used to, your body will adjust to that and you'll be tapping your foot more at your work desk all day and you'll jump up and move more quickly down to the storage closet to get another stack of post-it notes and come back to your desk a little more quickly and maybe be more inclined to burn off some energy, especially protein. That's why these high protein diets are becoming popular because it's not easily stored as fat and you're just going to be more energetic and all that kind of stuff. But I don't want to wander too far because what we're trying to do with this book is kind of cut through all the controversy and confusion that's out there in the diet scene. And we have some really loud, strong voices in the whole food, plant based movement that this is the way to go and it's better for the planet. And it's so great in so many ways. And then we have like carnivore, which is getting super popular. And I'm fascinated by because I think a lot of people are gaining benefit and healing from avoiding what we all generally agree to be super healthy plant foods. And, if you start to spend more and more time with this, it's easy to get confused unless you're, diving in it knee deep all day long. And what I think really most people deserve to do is just take a kind of a basic approach that's doable and sustainable. It's not too complex, but that can have lasting, life-changing benefits. And so, in short, if we were cut off by the TV news in 30 seconds, my pitch would be, look, quit eating so much food so frequently, and you're going to turn things around. It's going to feel great. And so the topic of fasting, people call it intermittent fasting. I call it fasting because it's
Yeah.
just, I don't know what the intermittent part came into. You're fasting or you're eating. Uh, that's becoming very popular for good reason because the body works really well in a fasted state. You have better immune function, inflammation control, cell repair. All these health benefits come to you when you're not eating. And of course, we do have to eat to survive and get energy and all that. But if you can get skilled at skipping meals and going for periods of time where your energy source is now compelled to be stored body fat, that's when you can have these great health awakenings. And then when it's time to eat, rather than portion control or stressing about your exact macros or having someone tell you what foods you should eat and all that kind of thing, we wanted to make it a little more comfortable where you can eat to the level of enjoyment where you're actually enjoying your life and you're not stressing or worrying or obsessing about your caloric intake, but you're eating until you feel satiated. And you're choosing, of course, nutrient dense foods. We like to recommend the ancestral approach where you're not restricting some of the most healthy foods on earth from the animal community. So the whole food plant based is a big challenge and it's a high risk approach because you're taking away all the foods that fueled human evolution, most of them. But besides that, it's like choose the meals that you enjoy, the circumstances that you enjoy, get good at fasting, and most importantly, get rid of the junk food.
Yeah.
And that, what was that one sentence with a bunch of commas? That's pretty much not too much to ask for most everyone. If you can get rid of that processed food and not eat so frequently, especially not snacking and grazing, because that pretty much compromises your ability to burn fat. Every time you put something in your mouth, even if it's a little snack, you immediately halt fat burning and you burn off whatever it is you just ate, even if it's healthy. And so if you do that 11 times a day or whatever it is, some of the stats are pretty disturbing. Dr. Panda, who does the time restricted feeding research down at Salk Institute, San Diego, he has an app where there's tens of thousands of participants, and he determined the average eating window. We talk about eating windows and trying to do a 16-8 pattern. The average eating window was like 14 and something hours. So in other words,
You-
most people on average eat from the moment they get up
Yeah.
until right before bed. It's like, wait a second. So we have to tighten up these eating windows, and that's doable for everybody. And not get too far deep into the weeds of the exact dietary approach, but something that feels sensible to you can really work well if you just get that idea that when you eat is just as important as what you eat.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there, Brad. And like, I know we promote a vegan diet for things, but I am not vegan anymore. And I promote it like to do it for a month to kind of like clean your body out as a cleansing healing program. But I know as like for me, as a woman who's in menopause, or maybe I don't know where I'm at in the stage, but that more protein is actually so much more satisfying and really like healing to my body and helping to balance my hormones more. So can you talk to us a little bit about, I know you have the big three that you say to avoid. Like, let's talk about some things that you should definitely absolutely avoid. And then let's just talk about some things that are good to get in.
Yeah, good question. Thank you. Because as it turns out, the major benefit of all these restrictive diets, carnivore, keto, vegan, uh, the the broccoli fast for a week, whatever it is, the main benefit is the stuff you're not eating. And
Mhm.
so if we're in a standard American dietary pattern and we do anything, throw a dartboard and it lands on, oh, it's a vegan month, or it lands on carnivore, beef, salt, and water only, like Michaela Peterson promotes, and it has amazing health awakening from that. It's because she took out something that was destroying her body. And so that's a great starting point for everybody. We can all nod our head and say, look, if you just cut out the junk, then we'll talk further down. Then you can go buy another book and learn about this keto thing or this carnivore thing or whatever's of more interest to you after you've had an amazing health awakening and you have more energy and all this great stuff. So the big three toxic modern foods are refined grains, sugars, and industrial seed oils. And we call these also vegetable oils, where you're looking at a bottle of canola oil, corn oil, sesame oil, sunflower, safflower. A lot of people cook with these, which is even a worse disaster. When you heat them up, they become even more toxic. But they are also found in all manner of packaged, processed, and frozen foods. So you really got to look at the labels. And if you're picking up something that's in a box with a label and a bunch of ingredients on there and chemicals, that's one step in the wrong direction anyway. But we really have to be vigilant to get these oils completely out of the diet. They don't have any taste, so it's not like you're sacrificing this wonderful, your favorite, sugary treat. That's a bigger challenge. But just to, transition over to the healthier oils. If you're cooking, you can use avocado oil. You can use all the saturated fats like butter, lard, recycled bacon grease. Gross stuff that comes out of the pan is vastly more healthy than that bottle of organic canola oil that you just bought at Whole Foods. So if we can immediately eradicate these oils from the diet, that would be number one. Again, not too much to ask, because you're not sacrificing anything. But as a important exposure here, most restaurants, just about every restaurant, cooks all their meals in these seed oils, vegetable oils, because they're cheaper. And it's a disgrace, especially when you go to an expensive restaurant and you're ordering a very expensive steak, whatever the broccoli is coming with it, and it's cooked in these nasty oils because they want to save $5 a gallon or something. So you have to inquire, see if you can get that omelet cooked in butter instead of oil, or go to a different restaurant. Kate Shanahan cites research that 40% of all the calories in restaurant food, starting from fast food, of course, with all that stuff, but also at good restaurants, come from these industrial seed oils. So dining out is a big challenge.
Because everybody knows that, I mean, as a chef in a restaurant, salt and fat, like you're going to win people over, a little sugar. And like, so yeah, I have friends that are like, well, what's wrong with Thai food? Well, you won't go, because I won't go out to eat pretty much. And I love that. I don't love it, but the fact that 2020, no one could go out to eat, my business increased because I teach people how to get back in their kitchen. And, like these, you're saying about these oils, and that's my biggest concern about eating out is like, what oils are they using? And I had this time that when I lived in San Francisco, and my favorite little Italian restaurant that I used to go to with, my friends, and think it was so high end and had like shrimp scampi and all these things. And one day I walked by, or I was running by while they were doing their delivery, and I see the oil that they're delivering, and it's just this big vat of vegetable oil, like corn and all the bad oils. And I was just so brokenhearted because I was like, oh, can't eat there anymore. And so eating at home really is ideal, or really doing your research, like you said. And I'm sure there's a few places, but it is really a tragedy that restaurants just use the bad oils, and it's so inflammatory. So that's the reason, is because of the inflammation. And so many people that I talk to, like, oh, my shoulders, my joints, my this, I'm like, are you eating out a lot? Like, what kind of oils are you using? That's usually the first question I'll ask people.
Right. And these oils also hamper your ability to burn stored body fat. They actually get integrated into healthy cell membranes. And so they're more difficult to burn. So they get stuck on your body. And the sources of these problem areas are this is somewhat of a contribution to the cellulite, or the things that, even though you're getting in shape and dropping weight, you can't seem to get that shape that you're looking for because these oils have been integrated into your system and are very difficult to burn. And so, if you have difficulty, or if you're interfering with your ability to burn stored body fat, guess what happens when you try to go keto and cut out all that sugar and go on a wonderful dietary cleanse or whatever? If you can't burn body fat well, you are going to drift back in the direction of getting your energy from carbohydrates in the diet. And no amount of willpower or a positive energy is going to stop you from, opening up the fridge and grabbing something if you feel tired and cranky and hungry because you suck at burning body fat and you're trying hard to do something good for yourself. So we have to get that body fat kicked on, the furnace kicked on, in order to succeed with things like fasting. And we do a good job in the book, because I know a lot of books are talking about how great fasting is. But we talk about, if you do this before you're prepared, you are in for a lot of trouble. And basically, you're going to get a stress hormone bath 24/7 for the duration of your 3-week food cleanse, because you haven't been prepared enough to start fasting like crazy or cutting out all the carbs out of your diet. So it's a matter of getting healthy as a baseline, and then you can expand and unlock all these wonderful benefits of restricting carb intake and losing weight, and all the great stuff that you see on YouTube and in books about how keto's been a wonderful catalyst. But you have to do it right. Otherwise, it's just going to be kind of a Biggest Loser scenario, where the camera lights are on, the people lose a ton of weight by getting tortured through exhausting exercise and starving themselves. But then invariably, they'll return to the baseline, or even worse, because of the compensatory mechanisms of the body having to struggle and suffer and restrict calories. So, don't even think about trying to cut back on carbs and fast until you get your fat burning under control.
Okay. So you're talking about 3 weeks. And so why 3 weeks? Like, why is that a good amount of time? When's it?
Well, there is some time required for the genetic functions to switch from predominant carbohydrate dependency to being fat adapted. And during that time, that important time where you're trying to wean yourself off of most likely a lifelong dependency on dietary carbohydrate as your main source of energy. Raise your hand if this is you. If you skip a meal and you feel like crap, then you're a carbohydrate dependent person. And most of us, from the time that we first got baby food stuffed down our mouth, started to transition over to carbohydrate dependency. So we can be patient. It might take 6 weeks for people that are coming from a place of extreme metabolic damage from years of yo-yo dieting or whatever that's not worked well in your past. But we have to do this carefully, and to the extent that you never struggle or suffer or endure intense hunger, mood swings, appetite swings, things like that. So it's not a torture fest. It's something that should feel comfortable right from the gate. without a lot of complaining and suffering and whining and crying about it. And so the way you can kind of do this without that pain and suffering involved is to indulge yourself in wonderful nutrient dense meals right out of the gate. So for me, when I first got working with Mark Sisson in 2008, that's now, almost 13 years ago, I did a cold turkey exclusion of grains from my diet. And I was eating a ton of food as an active guy. And I'd have my giant bowls of cereal in the morning and big bowl of pasta at lunchtime and whatever for dinner and the frozen yogurt for dessert and all this kind of carbohydrate going down my throat. And to make an immediate switch was a bit of a challenge. And I remember I had to trade out my giant bowl of wonderful cereal that I had every day of my life since I was a kid to a giant omelet. And so I'd wake up and first thing in the morning, I'd get 6 eggs in the pan. I'd chop up the vegetables. I'd have avocado and salsa and cheese in there. And this thing was a delicious feast. It was gigantic, a 6 egg omelet. That's like eating for 3 people at the restaurant. And I had that every single day because I needed that to sustain me because I was so used to this massive influx of carbohydrates first thing in the morning my whole life. But you can certainly ease the pain of that transition with a delicious omelet rather than saying, okay, I'm going to take away this bowl of cereal and you're going to fast till 12 noon. I know for a fact that wouldn't have worked for me. And I was a pretty healthy person. So a lot of people who are struggling, trying to get that fat burning going, do it in the correct manner so you're not suffering, and eat as many of the nutritious foods that you need to feel totally satisfied and comfortable and happy all the way down the road.
Agreed. Satisfaction is the number one important thing for people to stay on a plan. Anybody can starve themselves for a month, but to stay with it,
That's right.
satisfied.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then so let's talk about grains because you said like easing off of grains versus just cold turkey. Because I know for me, eliminating grains was one of the best things I could ever do for myself. Because even when I was eating, a vegan diet, I'd be like, have some quinoa from time to time. And even that I felt to be found to be eventually like too inflammatory. But at first it worked. And then as we keep getting cleaner, our body kind of turns into more of a fat burning machine. We start to notice like, yeah, that doesn't, I feel sleepy now when I eat that. So are you talking about transitioning off of grains in these 21 days?
Well, let's take the carbohydrate question and realize that we have nutritious carbohydrates and then we have processed carbohydrates. And all
Mhm.
the processed carbohydrates can go in the same category. So when you consume a bowl of pasta or some cereal or some bread, it's going to be quickly converted into glucose by the body to burn for energy. So it's not much different than eating some Skittles and root beer versus a pasta or bowl of cereal. And there's so little nutrition comparatively in all the grain foods in the whole family compared to the truly nutritious foods of the planet, which are in the animal kingdom and the colorful plant kingdom. You could make an argument for that. The animal foods have more nutritious nutrient density than plant foods, even. So we're not worried about switching off our whole wheat bread and losing the amazing nutritional benefits of whole grain bread or whatever it is. So if we consider processed carbohydrates to be something that no human needs for any reason, and if you need to kind of keep those carbs in the diet while you're transitioning, go for the colorful nutrient dense carbs. So you have honey and fresh fruit and all the vegetables and the sweet potatoes and the wild rice and the quinoa and things that are easier to digest and have more nutritional value than the processed stuff. And so I think, right out of the gate on day one, you can cut the sugar out of your diet. And you know what? That might be a little bit uncomfortable, but will ease your pain and suffering with your handful of macadamia nuts or 85% dark chocolate or my Brad's Macadamia Masterpiece, my wonderful product, which is now on Amazon. So listeners, just type it in the search thing and read what people are saying about it and read the description. It is amazing. And that'll help anyone in a dietary transition for these wonderful, nutritious, and highly satisfying foods, as opposed to that bag of potato chips or that pint of processed ice cream. Even ice cream has different quality levels. And Ben and Jerry, our friends from Vermont, those natural hippie trippy guys, you find vegetable oils in the ingredient list on many of their flavors. It's shocking. So just being careful to get that junk out of there, then you're really marching on a good path. And, sugar is a really tough one. It has addictive properties. We know that from the great research of Dr. Robert Lustig and many other people. Gary Taubes references it in his book. Dr. William Davis, author of the best-selling book Wheat Belly, talks about the addictive properties of the gliadin protein that's contained in wheat, in modern day wheat. So we are literally addicted to a grain-based diet, and it's going to be a tough challenge. But the way to kind of succeed is to get these foods that have so much nutritional value that they truly nourish you and satiate you, and your body really does feel like you're describing these intuitive sense of what makes your body feel good when you eat and what makes your body feel crappy. And we have to kind of heighten these senses now by cleaning up that diet and allowing ourselves to experience what it's like to be truly nourished and satisfied.
Yeah. So the eventual goal then is to get down to 2 meals a day of really satisfying foods, whatever that is for you, a balance of vegetables and animal products. Um,
Well, that's up to the individual. So, we're really careful to keep people it's sort of like keep people listening, right? If you're listening this long to the show, I hopefully haven't offended you too much. But whatever people are really firmly committed to, and they have a high awareness of healthy eating. I did a show with Dr. Casey Means. She's one of the co-founders of Levels Health, the CGM, a continuous glucose monitor technology, and she chooses to be a ketogenic vegan, and she's very smart. She spends a lot of time preparing her proper meals and taking supplements and whatever, so it works for her. And
yeah.
so, boy, are you gonna challenge her? She's a super healthy person. She has good blood work, good energy, and this is something that she's concluded works for her. But that indiscriminate approach of trying one thing one week and one week the other week, I think we have to do some good personal experimentation where we determine, what works best for us, what kind of digestion, elimination problems or improvements we see when we restrict certain foods. And kind of as an aside, the restrictive diets are a good way to start, because then you really tighten up the variables and you see, wow, my 30-day carnivore experiment, I had no more gas, bloating, or transient digestive pain that I've had every day my entire life. That's interesting. I wonder what it was. Let me try to reintroduce honey and fresh berries. Yeah, you're probably going to be okay. Let me try to reintroduce massive green smoothies with raw produce of kale, celery, beets, and all these things that have known to have a lot of plant reactivity, plant toxicity in there. And for me, I was big guy pounding those green smoothies because I thought it was going to be a super health benefit. But I noticed some digestive difficulties in association with that smoothie. When I stopped drinking it, my stomach no longer blew up in the morning. So for whatever it's worth, I know people can talk about how amazingly beneficial it is to, do a practice like that. But I'm making a personal choice that I'm instead going to fast and know that that trumps any green smoothie ever known on the planet. And there's a lot of scientific research behind that. And also, my stomach feels flat and comfortable now instead of bloated in the morning hours of the day. So that's just a quick example, and anyone can, relate in any way or totally reject it. But you got to have your own personal examples and your personal passion to figure out what works for you, and be open minded and be willing to change and revise subject to new information.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're just talking about becoming your own health detective and
Uh-huh.
what works. And like the smoothie thing, I've had the same thing because, I started out as raw vegan 23 years ago. And then over the years, introduced cooked and then started experimenting more with a little bit of animal. But the green smoothies had to go for me because one, it was just a bunch of calories because I was putting in everything. And then two, I was bloated and it was just I wasn't even full. Like an hour or two later, I'm like, I'm starving again because it was just this liquid. So I agree. I cut out the smoothies. I think they can be good if you're on a cleanse or something and you're not having solid food. But yeah, like finding what works for you by experimenting and like noticing, like, oh, I notice I'm bloated today. And we always talk about people having food diaries. Like that was how I actually was able to change my health. Is like I had oatmeal. Oh my God, I'm so sleepy. And then, oh, I can't eat oats anymore. And so just keep on checking in with what's working and what's not.
Love it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see. We talked about a lot of the stuff. Not beating yourself up too is a big part of it, right? Like just like if you make a mistake or you're trying to be on this program. So do you guys have like do you talk about that a little bit about like what happens if someone backslides? Or I know there's always backsliding. I was on this keto and then I carved out and Um,
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole chapter dedicated to the mindset because we've been in this game so long and heard from so many people. And it turns out that there's a ton of information available in today's world, such as this wonderful podcast. Thank you so much for having me. And, hopefully giving out some good info. But then armed with all this information, then we have a talk with the listener a year from now, and it's like, hey, why haven't you done a single micro workout? You heard about it back when on Pure Joy, and it sounded great, and of course you had time and energy to do it, and you didn't do it. Or why is your diet still a struggle? Rather than reporting a double thumbs up and everything's wonderful. And we get in our own way in so many different ways. Negative self-talk, negative habit patterns, self-limiting beliefs, and behavior patterns where even though we want better, we're kind of locked in this subconscious mindset where we feel undeserving. And instead, we make a disparaging comment about those superficial people on Instagram with their six packs. And I see those girls running around and they're showing their butts off and getting more followers. And isn't that ridiculous and terrible and awful? Okay, well, I know what you're saying, person, but on the other hand, um, what is it about you that has to lash out rather than just focus on, you don't have to follow these people if you think there's too many butts in your face, and you can just work on your own butt and, put your own standards in place rather than ascribing to nonsense that's propagated by social media and mainstream media, and just kind of get into a zone. And so catch these, especially these negative self talk and self beliefs. Some of them are talk, and a lot of them are just floating around in our minds, and be open to new and greater possibilities. And, I was an athlete, so I had to go through this kind of on the athletic realm where, I'm getting my ass kicked and I'm verbalizing a self-limiting beliefs. And I had great people in my life saying, hey, why are you talking like that? Why don't you just get your ass back in the pool and swim faster instead of complaining that another pack that drafted illegally on the bike got too far ahead of you and cost you money in the prize standings? And those recalibrations when you have the most extreme and dramatic competitive arena that is athletics, that helped me in real life to kind of go through it and realize that when you're seeing the private jet fly over you and disparaging the disgusting displacement of wealth in modern society, well, you know what, there's a lot of good points there. However, that has nothing to do with your day right now and how you can contribute to the economy by helping others and being in service and making a contribution. Has nothing to do with disparaging the private jet flying over. So, shut the F up, go back and refocus, spend time on things that contribute a positive benefit. And, the private jet's probably obeying all laws. So there's nothing else you can say about that. That was a pretty cool rant. But yes, we have a chapter on mindset. Thank you for asking, Elena.
that's it. I mean, I totally agree with you because, like, Byron Katie says this so perfectly. There's your business, there's my business, there's God's business. If I'm in someone else's business, who's watching my business? So watch your own business.
Nice. Yeah,
Back to
she's
yourself.
cool.
I
Yeah.
love that. That's a perfect way to kind of end. I'd love to ask you, what's one thing someone could do today? Like after listening to this, I know your book's coming out in March, right? And it's called Two Meals a Day.
How can you forget that? 2 meals a day. Yeah, go to two meals a day book.com. And if you pre-order, the delivery date is March 8th, I think. You'll get a bunch of bonus material. I have an audio summary of the entire content of the book. There's a recipe PDF. There's $10 off shopping at Primal Kitchen for all the healthy stuff that doesn't have the bad oils in there. So that's a good promo for visiting the book website. And because it's your show, I'm going to have to answer the question with taking a dab at cold plunging. And we're recording this show in the winter in the northern hemisphere. So if you can find an outside body of water, maybe you've driven by that lake every single day, or the ocean or the river, jump in there and spend a minute of time exposing your body to cold and realizing that as humans, we've lost so many of the environmental stressors and challenges that have made us strong, resilient, and focused humans. And cold exposure is one of the quintessential human challenges that we've made it through over millions of years of evolution. Our bodies are good at it, and it's all thumbs up. So if it's not a jumping in the river, take that cold shower, breathe through it, and then smile at the end. post it on Instagram, tag me, tag Elena. It'll be a fun little community building here.
Yeah, and I'll put all the links to get a hold of Brad in the show notes here. And I love the idea of doing it in public though, because how many people do we inspire? Those people that were watching you get in, like maybe they were freaking out, but some part of their mind, I'm sure the dude is like, "Do that."
Yeah, you
Yeah,
got this. You
yeah,
got this, people.
yeah, you got it. All right, well, great. Well, thank you so much for being on. So you are, so on Instagram, you're at Brad Kearns.
Brad Kearns 1. Yeah, you can find me. Go to bradkearns.com. You'll see these cool videos. You read about my Guinness World Record in the bio, and that only takes a minute 38 to watch because I set the record for the fastest single hole of golf ever played in my exciting sport of speed golf. That's one of my passions. So I try to have fun and make sure that as we pursue these health goals and lifestyle goals, we have a smile on our face. We're not taking ourselves too seriously, and that's an important background element that we're here to enjoy the day. So
Excellent. Okay, bradkearns.com. Love it. So thank you so much for being on. It's been such a pleasure. I feel like we could just keep talking and talking.
it was
This is
pure
the tip of
joy. It
the
was pure
iceberg.
joy.
I'm excited to read your new book, and we'll see you soon. Thanks so much for joining the Pure Joy Planet YouTube channel. Thank you for subscribing and giving us a thumbs up because that always helps to get ourselves out there more. And I just want to let you know that this podcast, this YouTube channel is brought to you by purejoyplanet.com. And I would love for you to go on over there and check out our liver flush program. We offer that 4 times a year or more on a monthly basis. We offer a 30-day detox for men and women, which is a guided, coached, live online program where you can come on and figure out how to like clean out your body, get fat adapted, learn all the things about hormone balancing, all kinds of great stuff. We have free recipes on the site. We have products. You can go and shop on our store and find out more about your liver flush, about what are the best enzymes, probiotics. So many great, amazing products, including our amazing nut milk bag, which I'm really proud of because I created that over 20 years ago. It's been a huge seller, and instead of buying some machine to make your nut milk or buying box nut milks, you can easily, for $10, make your own nut milk at home over and over and over again using this awesome bag. And I also use this nut milk bag to make my own green juice. So join us for the next liver flush, the next 30-day detox in May, and or buy a nut milk bag. I love you. Thank you for subscribing, and I'll see you again next time.